Hello everyone, welcome to another Making Monday Lovable video. And today's video is called Confessions of an Artist. And I thought, to confess something. And it is actually around the word artist. And this week is going to be my abstract art week, so I thought it fits. When it comes to the word artist, I've always felt disconnection from it. I've always felt shame about even calling myself an artist. I never felt good enough for the label of artist. At the same time, the way I grew up, somehow art was always part of my life. I always liked to draw and to paint. I actually will try to look into the camera. I was always very creative and would do and create things. I like to craft. And in my family, both of my parents are very creative in a different way. My mom, on all kinds of levels, very creative when it comes to home decor, crafting, puzzling, doing things with us, thinking, approaching life. While my dad was what I would call classical artist. He knows he still is alive, but he's not practicing art anymore. But he knew how to draw, how to paint, how to sculpt, everything, how to build, how to create everything that is typically considered art. And he could draw and paint in all kinds of different styles. He could do everything basically, and he could also draw and paint very realistically. Surrealism was one of his major art forms, but he would also do the most beautiful watercolor paintings of buildings or landscapes. So I grew up with an artist dad. And the other thing apart from this, he also actually lived and encompassed this picture of a troubled artist with all kinds of issues within himself, with the world. This troubled artist that, doesn't know how, what, where, and just wants to do art and create art and go back into his cave, and, all kinds of health issues, mental issues, all kinds of trouble. So he would represent this typical troubled artist. This archetype of an artist, and this beliefs of, who can make money from art, what's the point, and at the same time creating all of this. And I saw in my surrounding that everybody would be very drawn to whatever he was creating. They wanted him to create things for them, and always asking for paintings, for sculptures, for creative things. And he wouldn't like to do that because he wanted to do his things, and is a very closed up person, not easy to connect to. And so this is what I grew up with. And we had this connection because I would always draw and paint, but he was not a person that was good to teach, to share. I would always want to understand what his paintings mean. He didn't want to share. Teaching me how to draw and paint wouldn't work either, because he would just set me in front of a still life that he would arrange and tell me, now draw it, and leave the room. That's not a very engaging and pedagogical way of interacting with a child that wants to learn and get better in a certain skill. So this is what I grew up with, and this is also seeing his art and his creations. I would always compare myself to him, and I would always be I'm not good enough. I'm not as good as my dad, basically. And he would never say things like this. Of course, like, no, here the shadow needs to be different, and here the light is like this in our still life interactions. But it was somehow inside of me that this typical troubled artist archetype, that's not something that I wanted. And then seeing generally how society was like, you can't make a living from art. My dad, however, he he worked in the opera, so he was doing the scenes, whatever requisites or like things you need for the scenes. He would paint them, he would craft them, he would carve them and build them. So he managed to find a job where his creative and artistic talents are valued and needed and used. And then when it came to me, after school, I thought like biology or art, because I love both. Now, some of you that follow me since a while, you know that I choose the science path, because I thought like art, who can make a living from it? And then I thought, digital, like computers. I grew up without computers and phone. Like, that's not real art. If I would, like painting on computers, technology, ugh, no, never. So I went for my other love, which is science. I studied biology, did my PhD. And then funny enough, during my PhD, I realized I'm not made for this classical academic path. And art found back its way to my life. And I decided to become a scientific illustrator. And that's what I'm doing now since over 5 years. So I managed to incorporate art into my science world and make a living from it. So I'm actually a living proof and example of to be able to make a living from art. And it's not just me. I'm not the only scientific illustrator. And there's plenty of artists that make a living from being an artist and with their paintings, sculptures, whatever. And yet, calling myself an artist feels really, there's something off inside of me still. Because and I can't explain it. Knowing that I'm a scientist and I'm capable of using my logical, rational, analyzing brain and so on and so forth, it doesn't make sense whatsoever. It's not logical at all. It's complete poop to say like, I'm not an artist, so I can't identify with it. But the thing is, it's not about anything logic. It's something deep inside of me that sits there somehow, even though I know and I am creating art and doing it, not just in form of scientific illustrations, but this week you will see in form of abstract art. And it took me 35 years, 34 and a half, 35 years until I dared to paint for myself. Until then, I dared to share it with friends that are close to me. Until then, I dared to share it on social media. So to somehow baby step by baby step get comfortable with the thought, well, I'm also an artist in that way, not just in scientific illustrations. And I personally believe that each one of us, human beings, has an artistic and creative core, because being an artist, it's not just about painting or making music or sculpting, but it is about creating whatever. It could be with writing, it could be with anything. To express creativity could be, in dancing, it could be in how to approach life in a creative and artistic way. That's also a type of being an artist. So yeah, for today, this is a little bit my confession to you that I still have troubles to call myself an artist. And I know that I am. And I see that I create, and others would easily call me an artist. But then it's another thing. It's nothing logical, because if, it doesn't matter what people and how people see us. If we kind of haven't like completely encompassed everything within us, it's tricky. Even though it helps when people say and reassure. But I am also very I'm confident that I'm on my way to fully embrace this, and sharing my abstract art pieces with you here is part of it. So you actually help with it. So that's my Making Monday Lovable video for today. If you have any thoughts on that, feel free to share them with me. Otherwise, I wish you a great Monday and a nice week ahead. And I managed to look into the camera all the time, or most of the time, I hope. Okay, have a nice day. Bye, and talk to you next week.